the 150th anniversary commemoration of the birth of Mafukuzela, Dr. John Langalibalele Dube. It was the late Dr. B.W. Vilakazi who in 1946 said that Dr. Dube was a great, if not the greatest, black man of the missionary epoch in South Africa. It was also Mr. Nkomo who wrote that the generations to come will agree that Dr. Dube was an outstanding hero of the African people who came in many centuries. He was a scholar, a gentleman, a farmer, a teacher, a politician, patriot, and philanthropist. In the African National Congress, we are proud that he was our founding president in 1912, and that President Nelson Mandela cast his historic first vote on the 27th April 1994 at Ohlange Institute, a school that was built by Dr. Dube and his wife, Umama Unoktela Dube. As the provincial government, we will be supporting all effort by the Dr. Dube Institute to celebrate the life of this hero and titan of the struggle of the liberation. The program includes lectures, debate, and discussion on the work and life of Dr. Dube, as well as his wife, Umama Unoktela Dube. We wish to applaud the Dr. John Langalibalele Institute for driving the commemoration program to pay tribute to this tireless servant and the brightest son of Africa. This is befitting to the memory of Dr. Dube, who dedicated his life to the unity of our people and the liberation of the people who were oppressed by the colonial masters. Dr. Dube's life and time remains a useful compass to guide us as we navigate the challenges of our time, such as COVID-19, unemployment, poverty, inequality, crime, and many more. Like Mafukuzela, we must rise and occupy the front trenches in the struggle to overcome the current challenges. The life of Dr. Dube reminds us that it is not enough to be content with self-serving recognition as a learned person or an academic if one's education is not used in the service of others. Against all odds, against him, Mafukuzela pursued his dream of freeing an African child from slavery, land alienation, and equip them with skills that would make them self-sufficient. At the age of 29, he had already established a center for education, Ohlange Industrial School in Inanda, a school that has nurtured talents and produced many of our leaders. Today, Mafukuzela's memory maintains a towering presence in our midst. He displays selflessness in many aspects of his life, such as using the share of his land to invest in the future through educating young people. His life remains a blueprint of what it takes to improve a community and the way that will contribute to their development and enlightenment. As we reflect on the life and the times of Dr. John Langalibalele Dube, we must trust that as a collective, we will be able to find solutions to challenges that face us today. These challenges present themselves through rising unemployment, crime, poverty, inequality, and violence against women and children. Our challenges have been further compounded by this outbreak of COVID-19, which has tempered with the focus of all lives, especially the economy and job creation. In doing justice to the memory and the legacy of Mafukuzela, we will continue to put education at the forefront of our effort to fight inequality and the rate of unemployment. as well as building a united nation, unity in diversity. Mafukuzela's life remains a vanguard of our values, our moral compass of what we must do to succeed and what we must not do to fail the masses of our people. As we reflect on the life of Dr. John Langalibalele Dube, we will also reflect on another pioneer and towering giant, Umama Charlotte Maxeke, who also would have turned 150 years this year. It is therefore fitting that KwaZulu-Natal will roll out a series of programs to make the 150th commemoration of both President Charlotte Maxeke and President John Langalibalele Dube. The commemorations will include dialogues, literature work, and essays to deepen the memory and educating ourselves about these leaders. Once again, best wishes to the organizers, the speakers, thanks to the sponsors, and we are hopeful that all participants will have a remarkable engagement, and let's make this 150th year of remarkable freedom stalwarts and pioneer a great success.
The year 2021 is a very significant year in the lives of our people in South Africa, especially Black people. For this year, John Langalibalele Dube, popularly known as Mafukuzela on Zulu, celebrates 150 years since he was born. He was born on the 11th of February, 1871 in Inanda. And so this year is very significant for us to remember that a great leader of the South African people was born. John Dube is remembered for having founded Ohlange Institution, which is one of the first schools to be founded by an African person through his efforts. There were a few others before that one, but his also is a key institution to be founded single-handedly by a South African. Secondly, he was the founding president of the African National Congress, which at the time in 1912, January 8, when it was founded, was known as the South African Native National Congress and would later be known as the African National Congress. He was the founding president, the first one to do that. He was also the founder of Ilanga Natal, the first Zulu newspaper to be founded. He was also an author, together with his wife, of the first songbook written in Zulu. He was also a pastor of the American Board mission, very, very important denomination in KwaZulu-Natal and in South Africa. We come to celebrate and to remember the life of this colossal of our people, the work that he did for the liberation of the African people. Now, with me here, I've got three very, very important people who know the legacy and celebrate the legacy of J.L. Dube. First, I have Langalibalele Dube, who is the grandson of J.L. Dube and Angelina Dube. He is here with us also to make a contribution. Welcome to you, sir. And we also have Professor Heather Hughes, who authored the first substantial biography of John Langalibalele Dube, titled First President, a life of John Langalibalele Dube, the founding president of the ANC. And then we also have Professor Cherif Keita in our midst. Professor Keita is known for the work that he did in producing a documentary of J.L. Dube, very, very substantial documentary of the life and times of J.L. Dube, together with the documentaries of William Wilcox, that great American missionary who sponsored and supported J.L. Dube, and also a documentary of Nogutela Dube, where he also helped to locate the grave of Nogutela and ensured that she's given due respect. Now we'll take this time, therefore, and ask a few questions to them. So on what they remember about Dube and what does this year mean for them, and maybe what it may mean for all South Africans today. I start by asking a question to Mr. Dube, the grandson, so that he can share with us what is the feeling of the family, the J.L. Dube's family, when we were celebrating 150 years of this great man that we all respect and look up to. What is it? What's the feeling in the family about this, Mr. Dube?
Thanks, Ntungo, for the opportunity. Let me also extend greetings to everyone that is part of this roundtable discussion. And again, on behalf of the Dube family, we are greatly honored and privileged, to see our grandfather's legacy being celebrated in this way. And again, I'd like to extend gratitude to all the leadership at local level, at municipal level, and national level for having just developed the thought to say Dube deserves a place, to be honored in this way. Obviously, we all know that February 11, or let me say the month of February, it's a month that even ushered, a new democratic order in the country. We'll recall when Nelson Mandela descended right at the Inanda township, right at the birthplace of John Dube, and where he started the Ohlange Institute. And he could have decided to go and cast his first ever democratic vote anywhere in the country, but he wanted to pay this tribute and honor to our grandfather, to say, today we are chanting a new order for the country when we know that we've enjoyed the damage of apartheid over the years. Now it was one way of ushering in a new fresh air to the country where everyone of all races had to come and embrace this new democratic order where South Africa was to be stamped to be a free country. And again, it actually makes us as the Dube family to be happy, particularly on the 11th of February, like you've briefly touched on, to say this is the day that actually marked, the birth and even the passing of our grandfather. What does it say? And again, the 11th, also Madiba decided coincidentally to have been released on the very same 11th of February. So it's quite a very significant day. It makes us happy. At the same time, it makes us sad for anyone to part when a lot is expected of him. Prof, let me just end at that. I know as we move along, we will be touching on different highlights, tracing the footsteps and the works of J.L. Dube.
Thinking about the date of February, one wonders was this just a coincidence, or there was a hand of divine providence that around Dube, the significant days happened in February. Very, very amazing. And the liberation of our country and of our leader, Nelson Mandela, happened in the same month and all that. So it's wonderful to hear that. Professor Hughes, you made an unbelievable contribution. J.L. Dube died in 1946. And from then, right up to 2011, no substantial book really had been produced as his biography. And you did that work, and you worked for a long time piecing the pieces together in order to give to us as a people the story of J.L. Dube. Will tell us your own experiences and journey with this project?
Thank you so much, Professor Khumalo, and it's great to be here to discuss the legacy of John Langalibalele Dube. I was lucky when I was at university at Wits in the 70s to have been a student on the very first course on African history that was taught at Wits in the early 1970s, which is where I first encountered the name of J.L. Dube. It was not something that was taught in any schools, and I would just became very fascinated. In the late 1970s, I was very, very privileged to be able to live at Inanda Seminary, where my husband was a teacher. And it was when living at Inanda, I just decided that something really had to be done to make this character more known. Those were very dark days of apartheid, as Langa has already as referenced, and when the more I researched, the more I discovered. I mean, you already indicated some of the significance of this character. He was an educator, he was a pastor, he was a philosopher, he was a novelist, he was a poet, he was an editor, he was a publisher, and he was this politician. I mean, the more I investigated, the more I realized just how remarkable his achievements would be at any phase in history, but certainly at that phase as a Black person in South Africa, sort of having to grapple with the damage of segregation. So it was a long journey for me, because there, as I explained in the beginning of the book, there's no set of papers somewhere that a person can just go into an archive and sit down. Life, the traces there and all over the place, and so it took quite a long time to put together. I hope very much that will be only the first published book-length study of Dube. I think other people will have different perspectives, and I would like to just pay tribute to those people who had tried to write about Dube before. Rolf Reginald Glomo had tried to put together a biography of Dube before, but he was defeated by lack of resources. And I think we just need to remember that others had tried. There were lots of people who knew of his significance. And I feel very privileged to have been able to publish that book and to research it and to write it. And I just hope it will be one of many in the future.
Thank you so much. In fact, this is the book that we are talking about. To those who may not have been able to see it, you can still get it from Jacana Press. Wonderful book, amazing.
Can
amazing
I just
book.
say, Smangaliso, there's your book as well. You need to mention that.
Yes, we do have another publication which we also did on J.L. Dube, still available also. Now, Professor Keita, if I may come to you, you also did amazing work and you've got amazing stories to tell about Dube. You produced a documentary, very, very substantial and documentary on Dube's life, but went on to produce another one on William Wilcox, who had sponsored Dube. And then you went on to produce another one on Nokutela, as if a documentary was not big good enough on Nokutela. You helped us to locate her grave and made sure that she's honored. What does the J.L. Dube legacy, how does it stand out for you? At least 4 characteristics of that great legacy that stands out for you.
Thank you so much, Professor Khumalo. Thank you to my colleagues here on this panel. I want to begin with the word of my brother, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who said in 2006, when he met me in Pietermaritzburg, I'd come from the US. I was on the footsteps doing the research on Dube. He told me, Professor Keita, your work is beyond academic research. It's ancestral possession. He said it is ancestral possession. So I see myself as somebody coming from West Africa who's been living in the US, as a person who's been called by the spirit of Dube. I think you began by mentioning this coincidence between Mandela's release and Dube's death, which is almost as if Dube's death really, Mandela's liberation released Dube's death again, so he could continue his journey. So I believe that my presence here as a West African who lives in America is the international dimension of Dube. Dube's appeal not only as an African icon, but as an international icon, one that preceded Mandela, who goes on to become also an icon of international significance. Those people's spirits cannot die.
Yeah.
I believe that I am called by the Spirit. And, you know, you can explain it rationally if you want. You can explain it any way you want. But I see myself as that. I put my passion to the service of an academic, production. And that's how I see my intervention. So, again, Dube for me, I go back to one thing I picked up on when, to me, that represents Dube's program. He says he was answering a reader of Inanda, his newspaper, who was chiding him for telling Africans that they should also try to acquire land. This white man was trying to chide, to scold Dube. Dube tells this to him. He says, I think such a gospel as you preach to me, you ought to preach to your own people, the whites. They came here and found us neither selling nor buying land, bought it off under our feet. Until today, the majority of our people are paying rent to them. You suppose I am going to keep my mouth shut and not advise my people to do likewise? No, sir. If I can serve my people in this capacity, I think I'm doing the greatest good I'm capable of. Teach the white people to stop buying and selling land. Then it will be enough for me to listen to your views. And then he says this, I want my people to plow the virgin soil, their picks to dig the hidden treasure, their intellect to invent machinery and expand their markets.
Wow.
To me, these last few words set out Dube's vision for his people. A nation uplifted, a nation that keeps expanding. So I think this vision is still something with us today. We are still working on it. So that's why it's good on the 150th anniversary to take stock of that vision again and see if we can make it visible, palpable to the youth. Because Dube dreamed some of these things as a young person, to make our youth understand again that there is nothing wrong with dreaming, so long as you work to achieve those dreams, as John and Mama Nukutela have done. So this is the significance of Dube, of this celebration.
Thank you so much, Professor Keita. If I may come back to you, Heather, you had the privilege that most of us never had of sitting at the feet of Angelina Dube and listen to her story and interview her about her husband and his legacy. And you have gone on to write essays about Nokutela. So the two important women in Dube's life, as we would know, that Dube was first married to Nokutela, who later passed on, unfortunately, and then he was married to Angelina Umakumalo. Those were his the two women in his life who played a very, very important role. Would you share with us briefly your experiences of Angelina Dube as you interacted with her, a little bit about Nokutela, and then soon after that, Professor Keita will come in and just say more about his journey with Nokutela too.
Thank you, Smangali. So I think it's quite important that we understand that those two women in Dube's life helped to create the greatness. And that's not taking anything away from the man himself. It's adding to the story, I think, that those women were very important in his achievements. You know, these were joint collective efforts to do the great things that Dube did, to found Ohlange and a newspaper and all the other things. And some of those, you know, they're still going, which is such incredible credit to the vision that they had in the early days. So Nokutela was a remarkable person. You know, she was one of the first African women from South Africa to travel abroad, to go to the States. She made such a fantastic impression on all the people she met there. She mixed with really important thinkers in London, people like Olive Schreiner, and other sort of leading figures of the day in the first decade of the 20th century. And you know, I think that it comes back to something that Langa and Sharif have both said. These were international people. They walked on an international stage. They did so much in KwaZulu-Natal. They did so much in South Africa, but they were also international. They were plugged into all kinds of international movements and corresponded with key thinkers through the first half of the 20th century. After Nokutela's death in 1917, Dube went on to marry Angelina. And yes, I felt very privileged to have met her. She was by then in the early 1980s very ill herself. And I wasn't aware until after I had spoken to her just what an important figure she was. She almost continued the legacy of Nokutela. It's not a well enough known fact that Angelina Dube was at the first Pan-African Congress in London in 1921 that was opened by W.E.B. Du Bois. You know, and she met him. And so these, again, it stresses that sort of strong international connection that these women had, but also the incredible importance of their local commitment. Angelina was one of the people who was a founder of an organization called Daughters of Africa, and they did an incredible amount of charitable work in the Inanda area. In fact, all over the country where there were branches of Daughters of Africa. So both of these women were public figures in their own right, as well as associated with this very famous John L. Dube. And I like to think that they will get more recognition for their own particular roles in the history of liberation in South Africa.
Thank you, Professor Keita.
Yes, Heather, what you said is really true. These women were incredible in the sense that they were not behind their men, they were next to their men on the front line fighting. And this is the part that really, touched me, because I realized that for Dube to have been able to do the great things, there was a woman partnering with him. But unfortunately, in the telling of history, women's contribution is always seen as a footnote in the epic battle of man, which to me is so terrible. So I realized that after telling the story of Dube and telling the story of Wilcox, the missionaries, the men, I realized that there was somebody missing. And that somebody was Mama Nokutela Mdima Dube. I said, if I stop with 2 films and without telling the story of Nokutela, it means that I would have contributed to even pushing her legacy into oblivion even more. I say, I can't do that. But how do I do it if we don't know where she's buried? Because I had been aware of her life and her contribution to Dube's journey. But nobody seemed to know really where a resting place was. Until I came across an article in the Ilanga that said, Nokutela Dube Kaseko. I said, this is Nokutela Dube's obituary. And I went through it. It says that she was buried at Brixton Cemetery. Then I said, well, this is where we need to dig. And then I had been so closely associated with the Dubes. And in the process of really bringing up Nokutela again, so we managed to bring the Dubes and the Ndimas together because they both contributed to this legacy. I mean, in fact, we should mention that before Otlange, John and Nokutela built a school before Otlange.
Yes.
School in Kwadi. And that school today, which continues to exist, would not have been built and maintained without Nokutela's brother's support, John Ndima.
Yeah. Yes.
Also is a non-sung hero. So we have to bring so many families who contributed. So again, the unity, the power of unity. I think that's what one of the parables we can draw from the life of people like Dube, you know, Nokutela, Angelina Khumalo, that these are people who came together as a united front because they knew that they had to work to uplift a nation. So I believe that we need to tell the women's side of the story too. Yes. And that's why, you know, I say Dube was a man who was blessed because he had two wonderful wives. Nokutela who built with him and Angelina who came and kept everything together for posterity. So if we are able today to celebrate within the walls of Otlange, it's because Angelina, made a peace upon her, it's because she kept things together, because she kept the women also in the telling of our stories.
I'm sure you would agree with me that time is just an enemy when it comes to a legacy like this one, because we wish we could have so much time just to continue celebrating these great leaders. But now let's bring the conversation to who do you think, or would you suggest, how should we remember J.L. Dube? And maybe even with the two ladies in his life, how as the current South Africans and Africans, what would be the important way for us to keep our mind to as we try and remember them? I'll ask Langa to go first, and then Heather, then Sharif, and then we'll round up and close this conversation. Mr. Dube.
Thanks again, Prof. I think one way to remember Dube and really pay honor to his works is to make sure that, because all what he initiated at the center was about youth development.
Yes.
You know, trying to create opportunities, you know, for our youth, because a nation that does not look after its youth, you know, is doomed. It cannot prosper. And indeed, we've seen that in the philosophy of our grandfather creating the Otlange Institute. One, he wanted to make sure that the young South African, black young girls and boys, you know, are given opportunity to gain the ability to be able to stand on their own, for self-determination, and to believe into their own future by means of saying, yes, I can, I'm able to do, you know, and fend for myself in order to look after my family. But again, going back to your question, I think the youth of South Africa, in fact, needs to be assisted, you know, in acquiring scientific knowledge, because without knowledge, we'll remain in the dark, so to speak. And if this could be taken up by our government, it's a pity that while some plans, you know, that were enshrined into the comprehensive national development plan, you know, there were disturbances by virtue of the COVID-19. But again, as our president has demonstrated to say, yes, we're still going to go back to our normal. So I think the inculcation, you know, of the culture of education will be the main, you know, cornerstone.
Okay.
So that we put emphasis to the youth to focus and also be given opportunities, you know, in different sectors of our economy so that they can be able to fend on their own.
Thank you so much. Heather, your last words.
Thanks, Mangaliso. I would completely support what Langa just said. I think the way we need to remember the Dubes, John Langalibalele and his two wives, Nokutela and Angelina, first of all, with a great deal of pride. You know, I think it's up to generations now and in the future to ensure that their achievements and as role models, they will not ever be forgotten. But I think that the other thing that for me it embraces what Langa just said is that they totally believed in the dignity of all people. And I think it's that sense of dignity and that I would like to stress is such a valuable quality that they promoted and that we should promote too, the dignity of all people and the right to a decent life.
Thank you so much. Professor Keita?
Yes, what I would say is that Dube should be remembered as a model of ethical leadership. And the need for ethical leadership in Africa today is crying everywhere. Dube and all his partners show that you have to be in it for the people, not for yourself. If Dube had wanted, he could have been one of the first millionaires of South Africa.
Yeah.
Because of all the fundraising he had done, all the effort he was putting in raising means. If he had been in it for himself, he would have left millions to his descendants. But Dube did not leave anything to his descendants. Everything he earned, he was given, he accounted for it in Ilanga. And he would put every single cent in the mission of educating the people. They were not in it for themselves. And I think today's leadership should take an example on them. That you have to self-sacrifice for the people, not for yourself. So, and this need is everywhere across our continent. So that's why Dube's model should be taught throughout Africa. The African Union should take up Dube's story. And in fact, I mean, there should be a Dube Day or something like that at the level of Africa. So we have to lobby for that and take the example beyond. For instance, through Black History Month, Dube should be taught in the US. You know, so again, because Dube was John and Nkutela were among the first bridges between African Americans and Black South Africans. So that's why I believe that again, that model of ethical leadership is a need we have today. So that's how I see Dube should be remembered.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you so much to you, Mr. Langa Dube, the grandson to J.L. Dube, from Professor Heather Hughes, the biographer of J.L. Dube, and Professor Cherif Keita, who produced the documentaries on Nogutela, on Dube, on Wilcox, and also made sure that we honor Nogutela. From me, Smangaliso Kumalo, from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where we work under the John Langalibalele Dube chair and the memorial lecture. We thank you for listening and for watching this documentary so that we can celebrate J.L. Dube and Nogutela and Angelina Dube. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.